All right, folks, welcome back to the High Octane Dads podcast. We're rolling into episode 8 tonight, so got a few good topics here, a little bit of fun stuff, a little bit of serious stuff. So, Chris, you ready to get started?
Oh yeah, let's go.
All right, got our Motion Race Works 2024 shirts on tonight that we got. If you hadn't got
Yeah,
yours, go and check them out. We'll put a link on the page. I think we've already got one on the Facebook page, but we'll throw another one out there for you.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how long he's going to sell this one or keep it on the site. So I wouldn't waste any time if you want to get one. And I'll in the video I'll have a picture of it popping up here. So if you're wondering what they look like, but yeah, we're gonna start off, Chris. I mentioned this to you earlier. There was an update literally right before we started about John Force from John Force Racing. They released that he is getting out of the hospital. He's gonna be able to go home and sleep in his own bed. He's still he's got some recovery ahead of him, PT and stuff, and he's got some short-term memory loss and a lot of things that go along with a traumatic brain injury that he had. But he did officially announce his retirement, which I think we kind of
Yeah,
expected. I mean, given the situation and what he's been through and just the legacy that he already has, like, I mean, it's a career you can hang your hat on.
you're best to leave on a high note and just keep on trying to drag it out. He won't be out of the drag racing world at all. But
Oh no. No, he's still got, his daughter's racing. He's got his racing team. He'll definitely be around. So, yeah, I mean, sad news to hear that he's retiring because it's obviously something like he loves it, but like you said, he'll still
right.
be around the sport. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
other headlines, interesting one that's related to what we talked about last week. The Secret Service director has announced her resignation as of today, or a day
Yeah,
of this recording. So, may never get any answers on what actually happened out there, but they tried.
yeah. We'll say that she got grilled pretty hard
Yeah, that
from all sides. It wasn't not biased at all.
Yeah, that those interviews or whatever they were, the legal proceedings, they were brutal to watch. I mean,
Yeah,
well deserved, for sure.
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be a lot more in the news about that, in the coming days. So, and then of course, tons of news around the election and who's, President Biden dropping out of the race and Kamala Harris getting the nomination. And I mean, there's just been so much going on. It's hard to keep up with. And we're not a political podcast, so we don't really have to go into it. Just it's kind of the state of the world we're in right now and something we'll be keeping an eye on. Because at the end of the day, I mean, this election is going to affect us and the folks that listen to this podcast. President Trump in his RNC speech said, day one, he's going to get rid of the electric vehicle mandates that are requiring all the manufacturers to go to EVs. On day one. So, that'll affect the car world if he does get elected. But I don't know, man. It's crazy.
For sure.
On to more fun stuff that is racing related. We've been talking a lot about this. And there's two parts to what I want to talk about with this one. But one is the idea around micro records. It's not exactly a micro record when you start talking about rarity of a vehicle, but it's kind of the same idea of wanting to be certain you have something unique and sort of carving it up in a way that maybe makes it more than it is. And I have different feelings based on whether when you're talking about, okay, how rare is my car? And you've got all these criteria and like, it was the only blue Corvette with the white stitching made on a Tuesday by Derek when he wasn't on a bender, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, what are your feelings on that when you're talking about like rarity of a vehicle? Do you think that it's worthwhile or increases the value in any way?
Um, to some people, I mean, I guess it's all into what you like. I mean, some people look for those really, rare, sought after options, colors, or whatever. I'm cheap, so I don't know. I mean, there's some merit to it. Like, you get certain cars with weird combinations, like maybe like a certain drivetrain setup with a certain color. As far as that goes. But I know people will take it even farther. I don't really care a whole lot about those because I'm like I'm gonna make it however I want anyway.
Right.
So
Well, and that's where like I think the rarity of the vehicle is important, especially when
right,
you're talking about collectors. And this is I'm saying this all to lead into when we talk about the micro records in racing. A lot of it in drag racing nowadays. where it's like, where do you draw the line? Because obviously, a when you say, okay, a Corvette that was a manual transmission, and if they made less manual transmissions than they made automatics, obviously that one is going to be more scarce, and supply and demand says that vehicle is more desirable, or it may be more desirable because people just like manual transmissions. But then, like, where do you make the line on what is considered a unique factor, right? Like, is day of
Right.
manufacture really relevant, or that sort of thing? And
No.
that's where it, you just have to, I guess, decide for yourself where you draw that line at. But then when we talk about micro records in racing, right? My views on this, I think, have changed a lot over the last, I don't know, 6 months or a year, and probably longer that I've been kind of thinking about it. But if you're out there trying to be the fastest nowadays, you're not. You're not going to be.
Right.
And for most of us, that's largely unattainable. You just don't have pockets deep enough to go out and be the fastest, even probably at your local track. So having, sort of saying, okay, well, I've got the fastest, H pattern stick shift car in the area, or I've got the fastest NA car, is definitely more attainable, than trying to just go out and compete heads up against whatever's there.
Right.
I was looking at Motion Raceworks posted a thing the other day, and maybe it's been a few weeks ago, but Cody Rogers had set a record, and when you read it at first, it's like, okay, it's the first car into the sevens on a Gen 2 stock motor with a factory overdrive transmission, right?
Okay.
When
Yeah.
you start tacking on all these criteria, it sounds, like, okay, again, where do we draw that line? Would you say the fastest, or the one in the sevens with a Gen 2 stock motor with factory overdrive transmission with a stock hood with do you keep going just to say you've got a record? So again, where's the line? But I think for racing to make things attainable, even like for guys like us, it's a good thing. And you were telling me earlier
And
you kind of had some thoughts on that too.
and so, and not knocking this at all, because it definitely has its place, and I agree with what you're saying. I think I'm kind of taking a little bit more of another view on it. Like, I agree with it, but it's almost like, I guess, when bracket racing became a thing. Bracket racing, you're leveling the playing field to where everyone can compete, and it's not, you might come in there with the baddest, fastest fucking car, but somebody in, grandma's Buick out here might end up winning that day because of consistency, or whatever. And
Yeah.
so sometimes I'm like, all right, cars are getting so much faster, technology's out there now. And, like you said, it's hard for the average person, to get, whatever record, or you be the first one to do whatever. But is this kind of us, I guess, wouldn't necessarily be idolizing, but over idolizing mediocrity? Not really. I mean, trying to say that, make a reason for whatever we're doing to be better than it is, instead of saying, the fastest car or the slowest car, we're going to make all this shit between, type of a deal.
Yeah.
Kind of get what I'm saying?
No, yeah.
Um, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing or it's a good thing, but maybe it's just me thinking way too much into it. It does become a point where you can really saturate, hey, we're going to shoot for, this of this of this of this, and where before it was, run what you brung or whatever.
Right.
And you can really pigeonhole yourself, I believe, into a, like, if it's certain classes or whatever, or certain things you're trying to obtain, you might miss out on a couple other things there with the setups, or like you won't be able to compete in maybe some other classes, or if you're shooting for those goals like that. And man, I am off the rails.
Sorry, it's what we do.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I
Well,
definitely see there's a place, because like they said, automatic trans, but then you could break it down. Well, what, I don't know what year that is, whatever it is. Well, what trans is it, instead of just factory auto trans? I mean,
yeah.
you could say, I mean, because people could swap all kinds of shit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I don't guess that's really that different than any other of, what we've been doing in the past with the different classes when you go to drag races, right? Like you've got,
Yeah.
you might have your stick shift class, your NA class, and stock block, right? At LS Fest is one of the
Oh
ones
yeah.
that I think those guys were running in. And then you start to push those limits of like what is considered a stock block, right? How far can I
Right.
go before we say this is no longer a stock block? And they have very specific rules for it. And so I guess it's really the same thing, because you don't want to be,
Yeah.
an all motor guy out there running against, a pro charger car. But
I think the way I'm looking at it is probably like a lot of them those movies y'all used to rent as a kid that you said your parents might not have known what those about. Just kind of like, yeah, I know what it is, but this is what it really is.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Dad knew what the Cheech and Chong movies were. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't know if he knew we had rented them, but he knew. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, so what I was going to say too is like even for me, you talking about the bracket racing, like I'm gonna tell all the viewers just how slow I am. So I put together my stock 6.0 combo with a baby cam and LS6 intake and really crappy 327 rear end gear in the Borg Warner rear end, and running really consistent 1220s, like just cracking them off back to back. It wouldn't get below 1220, and it was between 12.20 and 12.23, like just pass after pass. So there was a part of me that thought maybe I don't touch it, because if I did want to go bracket race, like I literally could pull up, foot brake, slam the
Oh yeah.
gas, and crack off a 1220 over and over and over again. So it's kind of like, man, maybe I don't want to mess with it. But obviously I've got goals for the car to at least get on motor into the 11s, and then
Oh
go
yeah.
from there, because it's all NA. And
That thing's a gear change away, buddy.
yeah, yeah, I need a 9-inch, something terrible. Like it was one of those that I thought I was just gonna do like an 8.8, because why spend the money? But now, like from Strange, you can get not Strange, Quick Performance, you can get a full 9-inch for like $3,500 shipped to your door or something like that. At least last time I checked.
Right.
So that's in the works. Once I get the OBS on the road, I think that's probably my next big purchase, is a rear end. Not that I'm at any power level risking breaking my 9 volt.
Uh, I mean, stock that you can break them pretty easily.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, yours is a fairly higher gear ratio. It'll last a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And I mean, for as much as you're beating on it,
Yeah,
you're
I
not
mean,
drag racing every weekend.
no, not at all. And I mean, I hadn't been out this year at all. I'm definitely planning to very soon. But, I had planned to put a gear in that rear end. But man, trying to get gears for those 9 volts, it's like
Hmm.
some company out of Australia you can order them from, and half the time they're back ordered. And it was just like, man,
Yep.
it really isn't worth it.
Yeah. Like I said, I had one years ago, and I got rid of it. I never even used it.
But back on the topic of the micro wreckers, one of the cars that has had those is, I was actually out. I was in Houston, Texas, March of 2020, before like the world shut down. So I flew out, I think March, like I don't know, 4th through the 9th or something. I was out there for a class for a job I was working, and while I was there, guys in the class mentioned there was a big drag race because they heard I was a car guy, and I was like, what do you mean? I looked up, I was like, sure enough, TX2K is this week. So me and another guy in the class that were into cars, we split an Uber 2 days and went to the track and watched some racing. And we were actually there. Grubworm was there from Tick Performance, and
Okay.
they set the fastest H pattern pass in a LT1 Camaro, a 97 Camaro. That was super cool to see. And then I think, I'm probably going to say this wrong, I think it was Grannis Racing came out with their Supra,
Okay.
ran a faster pass. And so while yes, it was, and right as of right now, I think Grubworm still holds that record. Yeah, let's see, 0 to 216 in 6.6 seconds.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Yeah, the Supra's Grannis Racing, or Grannis. I don't know how they say it. I probably should know, but I don't. Tick is nice and easy to pronounce.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
remember seeing that video when it came out.
yeah, I was standing in the stands. I've got some pictures of the car at the staging line that I took while we were there, and then we were going to go back the last day. And I think when I really knew something might be up with this pandemic thing, um, was they basically came over to the loudspeakers, I think that Thursday while we were there, and basically said, like, racers and all are allowed into the track tomorrow, but no spectators are going to be allowed in. And I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
what in the world? And so I went back to my hotel room, and of course I'm looking into it a little bit more, and it's like, holy crap, like they're talking about canceling flights. And so I tested out of the class early the next day, took a cab straight to the airport, and like changed my flight up as quick as I could, and I was out of there and flying back home, because the last thing I wanted to have to do is rent a car and drive all the way back to Georgia from Houston, Texas. But yeah,
Yeah, that would not be fun, especially during that time period.
yeah, for sure. I mean, and you know, so I mean, it was cool to be there. Grubworm is it's an awesome car, and that's
Absolutely.
Jonathan Atkins driving that car. If I didn't mention it before with Tick Performance, but yeah, this is as of April 2023. They still held that record, so pretty
Cool.
impressive. And again, I
Yeah.
mean, so even within that micro record, right? This is where I think it's interesting is you can have that, and you've still got this competition back and forth.
Oh yeah,
And as long
absolutely.
as you've got that, it's killer. It's awesome.
So, and I guess this is another thing I was trying to get at with my little micro record thing. What it kind of reminds me of, in a way, is some of the days back in the forums where, let's say, all right, I've got an '86 Trans Am with a, LG4, a 700R, and a 273 rear. I want to see what I can get it to do with XYZ mods. And so then you look up and see what people have ran. There's been like databases where people would post their mods, and I'm like, you're almost breaking it down into like, all right, it'll run this with this with this with this. In order to keep it interesting, especially, with fans and to keep people trying different things, I mean, you can only be so fast. Everybody can only be, eventually you got to find different avenues. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, I like the street cars a lot more. So I'd like, oh, what's the fast street cars, like in the sixes somewhere at these days, or have we had a car fives yet? One that's actually driven, can drive to like some of these events, not just
Yeah.
a street car.
Yeah. Let's see.
I know plenty of cars have been in the sixes. I guess some of the sick week and drag week cars.
Yeah, here's an article from Motor Trend. Tom Bailey claims the 2023 America's Fastest Streetcar title. Let's see here. Twin turbocharged Camaro blasted off a 6.75 at 203 miles an hour. And I mean, this thing is radical looking. But I mean,
Oh yeah,
if he's driving it, in a drag and drive event, right, in drag week, like it's a street car. I mean, it might not have.
yeah,
And again, we're getting back to where do you draw that line? And everybody's line on, we could start a
yeah.
war talking about what classifies something as a street car. Is it, stock body panels? Does it have to have air conditioning? Does it have to, I mean, you go down that rabbit hole and you're going to be, well, we'll never make it because everybody will hate us after we talk about what's a real street car.
I mean, for me, it's got to have some sort of interior. It doesn't have to be a full stock interior, but as long as all the lights work and it's got some sort of interior in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to have air or any of this other bullshit, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Something you say, hey, you're not going to climb, and I mean, given might have to have a bar and a cage in the car. If you're not just going to hop in something with a crazy cage and sheet metal dash and zero gauges and just run to the store. Given, I
Yeah.
mean, most of these cars you're not going to anyway, but for me at least, I want something that if I could needed to hop in it and drive, a couple hundred miles, I could.
Yeah. I got to be able to hit a drive through too, man. I get hungry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a little bit of a correction too. It does say the best run of the week for Tom Bailey's car was a 654 at 215. So,
Oh yeah.
who's to say how long it is before we're seeing those in the fives, like you were saying. Like, and that's what I was saying earlier is, and I know I was rambling a bit, but if you really want to be able to hang your hat on something for a common guy like us that doesn't have, and I'm not knocking him, but you don't have Cletus money. You don't have, the backing of any of those guys have got, or the Street Outlaws guys. You know, you've got the TV money coming in and merchandise sale money and all these things. Like, it's just not going to be attainable to go out there and build a car that does what these guys can do, no matter how talented you are, right? Like, there's an amount of money that you're just gonna have to have. And I'm not knocking that. That's great. You know, they've chased their dreams. They've made that money. They've earned where they're at. They build those cars. Go and race them.
Oh yeah.
I might be out there at the track one day going, all right, I got the fastest 1986 Trans Am with the third brake light still attached and that's red with birds on the
silver
headrest.
and carmine interior.
Yeah. You know, let me have it. Okay. And, you know, it kind of goes back to, I tell people this all the time. It doesn't matter what you're into, because, you know, I'm a big time nerd. I'm an IT guy. I'm into video games and everything else. But at the end of the day, I'm like, just let people enjoy stuff. Let them enjoy what they enjoy. Who cares? You know, and that's kind of where that's why I say my stance has changed. At first I was like, come on, just race. And now, you know, over the years, my view of that has definitely changed.
Oh, yeah. And I agree with that completely.
So I didn't go on my rant at the beginning, and it is automotive related. I will say that. Yeah. What is up with parts from like the part stores and places these days? I mean, I've had pretty good luck with Rock Auto and places like that. And I always go to O'Reilly. We've got one local. I know the guys there. They're great. This is not their fault. It's really not even O'Reilly's fault. You know, last week or 2 weeks ago, my daughter's car, you know, wouldn't crank. We went out there and I tested it. And, you know, the alternator was bad. The voltage regulator was gone. So it was hot. And our local shop here was like, hey, I can do it for, you know, the labor was going to be like $150. And the part was, you know, $140 or something. And I was like, man, to save me an hour and a half out there in the heat, you know, dealing with swapping this thing out, because you got to take the power steering pump off and the reservoir and just kind of lay those out of the way and get all the stuff out of there and put the new alternator in. And I was like, man, it's worth every penny. So I just took it down there and they swapped it out. Well, she's been driving for a week and called me tonight after her band camp was over and was like, hey, my car won't crank. So, you know, I took it back down there to the shop. You know, it was like, hey, can you take a look at it? It's possible you just got a lemon alternator, right? And he said, yeah. He said, we've been seeing that a lot lately. There was a Nissan Maxima sitting over there. He said, I just put one in that one last week. He said, same thing. Alternator that we put in there, you know, brand new part, well, probably reman, was no good. My best friend had a power steering pump. Something jumped up in the road and busted the reservoir or something on a Ford Taurus that he uses just for commuting. And after he fixed all that, he still had a problem with the pump. So he went and bought a pump from O'Reilly. And again, not O'Reilly's fault, but he takes the pump, puts it on the car, still having the issue. So he takes it down to the shop, lets them diagnose it, and they go, yep, it's definitely the pump, but the pump was brand new. So then they bought another one, put it on there for him, and now he's out the money for the diagnostic and the, you know, installing the new pump, because he went ahead and let them do it while they had the car, all because the part was faulty from day one. Right, just like this alternative we got. And it just seems like that's been happening more and more, and now it's personally affected me, so I wanted to rant about it for a second. But I don't know if you've ran into that, where you're buying brand new parts and they're no good.
Yeah, so was it a year or two ago, right after I got my Caprice, I had the alternator went out of it, and nobody local had one. So I ended up ordering one off Rock Auto. Everybody on the groups was like, you need an AC Delco one. I can't remember. It's like, I mean, it's a high amperage, maybe a 180 or 160 or something like that. I can't remember right offhand. So I ordered one from Rock Auto. It came in, I put it in the car. As soon as I put it on the car, it made noise, and it wasn't getting, you know, max the voltage that it needed. So I pulled it out, shipped it back, and I took mine to a local shop to see if they could rebuild it, and he couldn't get parts to rebuild it. All right, so I ended up just ordering AC Delco off Summit. It was like $350 or something dumb like that, and then it worked fine, and that's what's in the car now. But I kept my original one. Apparently there is some guys that can rebuild them, so I would like to do that to have a backup. Last year I put a evaporator core in my Suburban, or 2 years ago, and I had to pull a dash out to do that.
Yeah, I saw the pictures. That was awful.
Yeah, I mean, it really wasn't that bad. It just, like, I think we talked about it before. It's just a lot of keeping up with everything. I tore it all the way apart, and I bought an evaporator core and a heater core, and only the evaporator core was bad. I got everything apart, and the heater core I had was wrong, made wrong, or was the wrong part, and I got it from Rock Auto. And I'm like, at this point, I pulled my original one out, cleaned it, just stuck it back in, and let it roll. And knock on wood, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just another one. Like I said, a lot of parts just either stuff's been, somebody sent it back, somebody grabbed the wrong thing, it was just made wrong. I
Yeah.
mean, I've gotten quite a bit of it myself.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I have a really good history. I buy more parts that aren't bad than not, from O'Reilly and Rock Auto. And I will say for electrical stuff like alternators and starters and stuff, I've had good luck with. There's a eBay store called DB Electrical, and I don't know why I remember that, but because I've only bought from them a few times, but everything like starters and whatnot I've had to get from them, I've had really good luck with, and their prices are usually great. I mean, it's hit or miss, and it happened. It's just, it was kind of this cluster of a lot here lately, and the guy at the shop said he was kind of having the same problem. If you're seeing a lot of these come in, they put the part in, and turns out it's no good.
And that's another good thing that, if you're not a DIYer, you can, if you go to a shop like that, a lot of times, they'll do the deal with the whole warranty process, and a lot of times you won't have to pay labor twice.
Yep.
So that is a nice thing.
Oh yeah, and I've talked about these guys before. I mean, they're one of the most honest shops in the area. I trust them. I'll send my wife down there, even my daughter. I'll say, hey, run down there and take your car and let them take it. And I know they're not gonna give her any trouble or overcharge on anything. And you do good business, and people will always stand by you. And I support those guys. And to my knowledge, they stay really busy, and it's just a sign of being a good business, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree, 100%.
Yeah. So on the list here, speaking of mods, maybe not buying faulty parts. What's your favorite like cheap, just simple modification to a car that maybe you do to all of them?
Tint,
Oh man,
window
that's a
tint.
good one.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I never thought that was a thing, and I really don't consider it. I guess didn't consider it a mod, but it has to go on anything I have now. The tint. And I've never been a fan of super super dark tint on the car because some cars it can kind of look off. I think
Mm-hmm.
I did go my Caprice when I got it. It had 5% on it, so that's what it's got. And I don't mind it. It's a little dark, which I do. I don't. I can sit in traffic, and I can just stare at people, and they can't tell I'm looking at. Because sometimes I might just have a dumb stare and just not be looking at somebody. I don't want them to look at me and be like, "What the fuck are you looking at?" I'm just, where
Yeah.
am I?
I think I told you when we went and picked Jonathan's truck up, the GMT 800, the blue one. It
Yeah.
looked like they'd spray painted the windows. It was
Oh
so
yeah.
dark. I could hardly see people's headlights through it. And we had it pulled off and put a legal tint on it. But my truck, I drove around for, I don't know, 4 years and never had tint. And finally, we were getting the windows tinted on my daughter's Civic. And while we were there, my wife was like, hey, for Father's Day, I'm going to pay to get your windows tinted on your truck. And I mean, it just changed it entirely.
Oh yeah.
And my Firebird still doesn't have tinted windows. So that's got to get done
Yeah.
soon.
So I tinted the side windows on my Trans Am myself with just some cheap tint just to try. And I am not the guy to do that because I get pissed and then I ball that shit up and throw it in the trash. But anyway, the side windows are tinted, but I haven't done it. And really, it's going to all have to be pulled off and redone.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm not worried about it until whatever I do with the car is painting it one day.
Yeah, mine's definitely going to get done. It just makes the whole car look so much better. I mean, outside of the privacy stuff, it just changes the look, and it is
Oh yeah.
super cheap. So I might have to change my answer. I mean, for me, and I was just talking Facebook. Somebody mentioned like Circuit City and old jobs, and it kind of got me reminiscing back to the old Circuit City days and how much fun that job was. But for me, it was like a radio and speakers, or a small 4-channel amp and speakers. For me is just, I love music, and that going back to the
Oh yeah.
definition of a street car. If I can't listen to the radio going down the road, it ain't a street. I got to have my radio.
So, and like those radios that I think we had a meme the other day where we put up, they had the little, dolphins and all.
Hmm.
So my uncle has one of those in his O2 Trans Am right now,
Nice.
and it works great. Like he swapped it in and out of the car a bunch of times over the years because he'd go through spells where he wanted to use a factory CD changer, and then he got to the point where he wanted to have MP3 CDs, and then later we could plug the iPod into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got that in the car right now, and I'm like, this people kind of pay stupid money for those things. And I have to look. I might have one of my tools.
Yeah. Well, I had that one in the Trans Am. So high school time frame, I had that exact radio because the screens could change. It did have the Dolphins. That's the one everybody sees, but it had a one with F-15s.
Yep.
There were quite a few different ones you could cycle through. I ended up I had a there was a I had drove a '96 Camry in college for a little while that I bought off my parents, a little bit better on gas. When I mean this would have been '07, '08 when things got crazy. Gas prices started to go up, or at least at the time we thought they were crazy. And
Yeah.
and so I was driving that, and I think I moved that radio over to the Camry and put a different one in the Firebird that had more. I think it had the iPod hookup and more preamp outputs or
Yeah.
something. And then I think that radio went with the car, which is unfortunate because I probably still have the box for it. I just don't have the radio anymore.
So I had a variation of that radio in my Camaro when I got rid of it. And it was kind of wild because I bought a 98 V6 Camaro in like 2006,
Mm.
that summer, I believe, right after I got out of high school. This radio was in that car when I got it, but they had the factory radio with the. I eventually swapped the factory radio back in because I liked the cleanness of the factory OEM look, and it had a 12 disc changer in the trunk,
Yeah.
and I couldn't use it with the aftermarket radio. It was in that car, and then when I got rid of that car, I bought a '04 Dodge Dakota. I put the radio in that truck, and it was in that truck for a little while, and then I got rid of that truck, and I had an '82 Trans Am. I stuck the radio in that for a while. I had an '86 K10 Silverado. The radio went in that truck. Then in 2011, I got rid of, traded it for my '92 Z20, and then that's how it ended up in that car. And then when I sold the car 2 years ago, I left the radio in it.
Yeah.
I actually miss my '82 Trans Am a lot. I miss that one
Yeah.
probably more than my Camaro. And I had that a few years, and it looked awful. I missed that car. I
Yeah.
think it was the whole Firebird thing. I always wanted one of those Heritage Camaros, and after I got it, okay, this is cool, but I think I kind of want to get back into another Firebird.
Speaking of the body styles of the third gens, right? I'm gonna catch some hate for this one because when they're stock and they're really clean and well done up, they're beautiful cars. I would never pick a 91, 92 Firebird over like ours with the more flat nose. I don't know it. They always looked like they were sagging in the front to me compared to like the Trans Ams like you've got and I've got. I don't know. They just were never my
So
favorite.
I like the 91, 92 is what got me into third gens because my uncle had a 92. But his was a non-ground effect car. You get the cars with the Banshee front end that has the ground effects too, and I'm not a fan. It has to be a formula or a base bird without ground effects. But I know my uncle, after having his, he always pushed in my head that all the other ones, oh no, that's not a 91, 92, da da da. They've all got that line underneath the front of the headlights where the 91, 92 is smooth with the bumper. Um, but once I got my '86, with the GTA style bumper, I mean, I like them both. And at one point, I really debated on swapping and getting rid of the ground effects and putting the 91, 92 bumpers on it. But
Yeah.
then I'm like, I know it would make it a lot like the car that kind of got me into them, but then it wouldn't. I don't know. See, the whole streetcar thing. I like some originality, more like I guess what you would call them pro touring builds, because I like a lot of original type stuff, but then I like the upgraded, streetcar race car feel.
Well, like I said, the on the 91, 92s, like they were cool and it's interesting too because I mean there were only 2 years of those, right? So they're definitely not bad looking cars. And
No,
obviously they were sort of that in between from the third gen to the fourth gen Trans Ams and the way that those ended up looking, with the more rounded front end, but I just that GTA front end, like you said, like we've got on our cars, is just, I love it. And by
Yeah.
comparison, I would pick that every time. The formulas are definitely great looking cars. I'll probably get kicked out of the Mullet Militia group from for even saying this, because I know there's a lot of love for those cars, and I'm not hating. I just, they were never my favorite. I would have, even given, and my Firebird folks are going to have to forgive me here, but given the choice between a third gen Camaro versus a 91, 92, like I'd jump to a Camaro before I would probably go to the 91,
Um,
92s, because I do love the look of the Camaros too.
yeah, and like I said, I do. But after having that one of mine, the 91, 92 Camaro bumpers are so flimsy. They look good, but now they're at the age where the urethane is just wore out, and
Yeah,
there's no real good aftermarket option for the 91, 92 bumpers yet. And there were so many different parts for the front bumper on that damn thing, where our cars, it's just basically one big bumper cover, and that's it. But there were so many, like you had the header panel for the headlights, and I mean if that shit wasn't right, your headlights were pointing at the moon, and I don't know. I just prefer. I think it's because you know the whole Pontiac, everything was hammered in my head when I was a kid, so I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, I think I prefer the Firebirds.
yeah,
And like I said, my 92 Trans Am I had, it was a non-ground effect Trans Am. It just had those little small body cladding right there at the wheel wells,
yeah,
and that was it. And then I had a friend of mine in high school that had an 84. It was, an early bird, I guess what they called them. But his was, it had the ground effects on it, but it also had the L69, the high output 305, and it had a 5 speed with factory 373s, and it actually had the Gale Banks two on the left, or what, or no, what, I don't think those wasn't two on the left, but it was the Gale Banks stainless catback on it, but we didn't know what it was at the time.
yeah.
But I'm like, now looking back, I'm like, damn, it kind of comes in your micro records. That was kind of a combination of a car back in the day.
Yeah. There were so many combinations, right? And there are definitely some that are more desirable, and it all comes down to supply and demand, either through scarcity from when they were produced, right? Because they only
Right,
produce so many of this one, or there are only so many of this particular model or combination left, right? Especially that's
right.
still original. But it's
Like them split window Corvettes.
oh man, yeah. Or like the the Chevrolet pickups with the five windows, right? Like
Yeah.
they're incredibly desirable. And there's a local guy here that's got an LS swapped one that he actually drove at LS Fest last year. I'll put a picture of it up on the video, but it's amazing. And he's like one of the most knowledgeable guys around, and super nice guy. He helps everybody in the area with their swaps and things and advice, and very talented guy. He's LS swapped some Miatas, and yeah, talking about radios in the cars. One of the things we were discussing earlier is what we would consider the best driving song, right? So what is the
Okay.
best thing out there for when you're cruising down the road? Hopefully in your third gen if you're cool like us, but for anybody out there, what's your best driving song? And it reminded me of I've been big into like the British Top Gear. I love that show, regardless of what you think about necessarily the cars that they review. Often those three guys, Jeremy Clarkson, James May, and Richard Hammond, like they had a chemistry for that show that was awesome.
Hmm.
And then they continued the
Oh,
show
absolutely.
on as the Grand Tour on Prime Video, for anybody that didn't know. And they just announced within the last month that they're officially like not going to work together anymore or do anything. But I mean, they've been doing car journalism and shows and things for a very, very long time, and love watching those guys. So anyway, there's on the Samsung TVs, there's free live TV, and there's a channel that does nothing but runs Top Gear, the British Top Gear, all the time. And so that's like my background thing. I'll turn it on and let it run. Well, they did some episodes back in like 2007 ish, talking about what was the best driving song. And they started out with a list, and then the viewers voted. And over the weeks, they kind of dwindled it down. And it's a pretty interesting list, especially for 2007. But I kind of figured it'd be fun if we did something similar and talked about what were our favorite driving songs, and maybe we'll keep that for next week and put it out on the Facebook group and let the folks comment.
Yeah,
I think that'd be pretty sweet. So what's interesting with this list, I will start. We'll talk about the rest of it next week, but the bottom 10 songs are a lot that I probably would have picked, to be honest with you. So yeah, in their top 20 list, there's quite a few on here that I would have picked, but number 20 was Boston, More Than a Feeling. Great song.
Oh, absolutely.
Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine was number 19.
Oh, yeah, excellent.
Feeder, songs Buck Rogers.
Okay.
You got The Cult and She Sells Sanctuary. That was tough to say.
Yeah.
The next one, Leonard Skinner, Freebird.
Oh,
That's a great driving song, but only rounded out on number 16. Number 15, this is just a great all-around song. Never listened to it where we didn't sing it with everything that we had, my wife and I included. Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh,
number 15.
Yeah.
14 was Don Henley, The Boys of Summer. It's a good song.
Okay.
13 was Blur, Song 2. That's the title.
Yeah, that's a good one.
12 was The Cardigans with My Favorite Game. 11 is Body Rockers with I Like the Way. And of the bottom 10, the number one song is Solid. And I'm betting Kevin likes this one. Kenny Loggins, Danger Zone. Was number 10. What a great driving song, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, the last 9 that I didn't mention, we'll talk about those next week. Hopefully we get some feedback in the Facebook group on what everybody's favorite driving songs are nowadays. I will say a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, for next week. There's not a single Van Halen song on this list. How?
What are we doing?
I know. Now, I will, my list will have some Van Halen.
Yeah,
Just throwing that out there, too. So I think maybe next week me and you'll come back with our top 5, and then we'll poll the group, and then we'll have 10 songs. Maybe you and I have some overlap, and then we'll continue this one when we meet next week.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Well, cool,
that'll work great.
Any last words?
We need more of you.
Tell your friends.
Well, no, we definitely I've talked to quite a few of you and of good supporters so far, and just talk about us, get us out there. The more we get put out there, it'll help us out, and we really like doing it. And the more views, the more we'll probably be able to put out.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's cool, like the people that message me, and the coolest thing to me is people sending us pictures of, like, I've got a friend that he owns a restaurant, and he'll send me a picture of our logo up on the TV. He's listening to it while he's back there cooking, or people sending pictures of it while they're listening in their car or on their phone, like screenshots. And I for whatever reason, I think that's cool. I tell you what, the people that have been listening and following and have really supported us, like, it's surprising that people give a crap what me or you have to say, I guess. But I love it, man. It's so much fun, and everybody's been great. So yeah, tell your friends and tell us what you guys want to hear. I know we're hoping very soon to get we've got a couple people lined up that are going to come in and sit with us. We're figuring out logistics of that, and that's going to be a lot of fun too.
And again, if you are interested, we'll put our the email in the description. You can reach out to us if you want to be a guest. We can either do a remote thing, kind of like we're doing. You're local to one of us, and we could figure it out that way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, heck yeah, man. This was a lot of fun. I enjoy it as always. We'll end it here, and then we will pick up next week.
Yep. I'll see you later.
All right. Have a good one, folks.